my name is Kathy Dyer. I'm the Executive Director for the Autism Society of Maine. I'm also the parent of a 26-year-old individual who has autism. And today we're having our keynote speaker, Dr. Kerry Magro, and I've seen you a couple of times, Kerry, and you joined me once for Coffee with Kathy, which I thank you for that segment.
Absolutely.
And so Kerry is an award-winning professional speaker, and he is the best-selling author and autism consultant for the HBO series Mrs. Fletcher. I don't know if you're going to be getting into that, but I'll leave that up to you. That was airing last fall. And he started his professional speaking 9 years ago via the National Speakers Association. And I've heard wonderful things about that organization. You've done over 900 events, which is unbelievable. In addition, Kerry's the CEO and president of KFM Making a Difference. It's a nonprofit organization that hosts inclusion events and has provided 68 scholarships for students with autism for college. And that's kudos to you, Kerry. That's a huge feat.
Thank you.
And in his spare time, he hosts a Facebook page called A Special Community that has over 195,000 followers. And hopefully we can gain a few more today for you. And we also want to mention that he's also written a couple of books, and some lucky people today are going to be able to have those books, where we have a raffle that's going to happen. So what we're doing is, once you've signed in, we have 3 of his books right here. So he has one called Autism and Falling in Love, the one that got away, Defining Autism from the Heart. And then we also have Light It Up Blue, which we'll be donating also. So we have 3 raffles that are going to be happening. I'll announce those at the end of your presentation. We also want to remind everybody that there's going to be a survey going out at the end of Kerry's presentation. In that survey, there's a question that says, if you'd like to have contact hours, please add your email address, and we will make sure you get those contact hours. We want to thank our sponsors too, who were able to bring Kerry here. Without them, it's kind of difficult to do some of these presentations. So the Department of Health and Human Services, we want to thank them for providing some funding for this presentation, and the Penobscot Foundation for Developmental Services that provided the majority of our fundraising to have you come on. So without further ado, Dr. Kerry Magro.
Our next guest is an accomplished public speaker and activist who has devoted his life to helping others. Not bad for a guy who was completely nonverbal for the first few years of his life. But once Kerry Magro found his voice, he had a lot to say.
My parents have always told me I'm special. So why am I special? And later on, I realized that I'm even more special because I have autism.
Kerry Magro's childhood was marked with rough patches. He was completely nonverbal at age 2 and diagnosed with autism at age 4.
I just remember having difficulties trying to explain myself to the world around me.
When Kerry did speak, he struggled to express himself.
Most of my memories were simply just about that kid who wanted to communicate with the world around him, but didn't have the verbal means of actually doing that.
His mother, Suzanne, remembers watching her son have a hard time adjusting to the outside world.
He turned 2 and he was scared of everything. He was scared of the water, he was scared of the rain.
But as the years went on, Kerry slowly began to find his words.
When you can't communicate with the people you love the most in this world about even some of your basic needs, it gets really, really tough. So, but luckily, once I started talking, I never stopped talking.
Kerry went on to graduate high school, attend Seton Hall University, and then independent living. Today, Kerry is a professional speaker, activist, and mentor dedicated to educating people about autism. Wow, this is a tough one today. Kerry is currently finishing up his doctorate in education while also writing a children's book about autism acceptance in addition to his public speaking.
Hey everyone, I'm so honored to be with all of you today to give you a little glimpse into my journey from 28 years from when I was originally diagnosed with autism when I was 4 years old in 1992 to today in 2020 being a professionally known speaker who's on the autism spectrum, who travels the world to celebrate neurodiversity. I titled this presentation 28 Years from then till now, because we often say in the autism community, it's not a race, it's a marathon, and we always have to take it one step at a time. And if I could leave you with anything today, it's that my parents really realized that we need to celebrate milestones as they came during my development, and we had to take it one day at a time. So before we get started today, I want to share a quick poem with all of you so you could get a little bit of a glimpse into my journey from nonverbal autism to today being a professional speaker. So this poem I'm about to share with you is called Only If You Knew Me. So if you knew me, you would know I was nonverbal until I was 2.5. You would know I was diagnosed with autism at 4. You would know I got kicked out of 2 therapeutic preschools because they said they didn't know how to control my quote unquote autistic behaviors. You would know I would lash out to get attention when I couldn't communicate on my own. You would know I twirled my hair. And because my sensory challenges growing up, I could never do haircuts. So I had like Steven Tyler rock star hair for most of my adolescence. You would know that I spent hundreds of hours a year in occupational, physical, speech, music, and theater therapy to get me to where I am today. You would also know that I spent hundreds of hours a year being bullied because of my autism diagnosis. And for a very short time during my adolescence, you would know that experts said that I would not graduate from high school. But if you also knew me, you would know I graduated from college. You would know I received a master's degree, ironically enough, with a focus in public speaking, so I could travel the world as a public speaker. You would now know, as of spring of 2019, I graduated with my doctorate in educational technology leadership. So I hopefully can one day be an adjunct professor on the college level to teach about our very special community. You would now know I have a full-time job as a professional speaker who works with the Speaker Bureau of the National Speakers Association. You would know I'm a best-selling author, life coach, and mentor to so many individuals in our community with special needs. And I wrote this poem when I was 19, and my mom gets a kick out of this, so I left it in the poem. You would know I've had a girlfriend. You would know I love my friends, my family, and specifically the autism community we have out there. But most importantly, you would know that I'm just Kerry. And no matter what autism means or doesn't mean, autism can't define me. I define autism, only if you knew me. So I started writing poetry as a therapeutic way of sharing about my autism diagnosis when no one around me knew that I was on the autism spectrum. I went from a kid who started saying his first word when he was 3, didn't start speaking complete sentences until he was 7. And then later on, once I got to high school, everyone would say to me, Kerry, you have autism, but you don't look like you have autism. So I grew up in high school with an invisible disability. And once I got to college and realized that there was not enough disability advocates in my local community, I just decided to start telling people for the first time that I was on the autism spectrum. And that was a very therapeutic way for me to share my voice very early on. I started writing poetry, which later led to several of the books that I've written today. So some of my earliest challenges were, one, a lot of ignorance in my local community. I grew up in Jersey City, New Jersey, and now I live in Hoboken, New Jersey. And the numbers of autism in '92 were about 1 in every 1,000 being diagnosed in the United States. And obviously, as we know today, autism is the fastest growing developmental disability. So these were some of the challenges I had back then: speech delay, expressive and receptive language disorder, severe sensory integration dysfunction, auditory processing disorder, twirling, both spinning in circles and twirling my hair as a coping mechanism. In addition to that, I also have a dual diagnosis of dysgraphia, because of some of my fine motor challenges. However, I would not receive my formal diagnosis of dysgraphia until I was about 20 years old. In addition to that, one of the things that my parents were really, really focused on was ruling out any other associated conditions that may have actually been linked with my autism diagnosis. So they were very, very keen on speaking to professionals about emotional challenges, because I would lash out a lot when I was a kid, because, you know, and so many of us know this who have nonverbal children who are on the autism spectrum, it can be very, very difficult when they can't share about their basic needs and have challenges in that realm. So we tried to see if I would receive a emotional disorder in addition to my autism diagnosis when I was 6, and they ruled it out. But once I started talking, as I said in the Today Show video, I couldn't stop talking. And my real biggest challenge growing up on the autism spectrum was sensory challenges. Now, one big thing that I constantly tell people in the autism community is that we have to realize that autism is a lifelong challenge. And I still have sensory challenges today. Even though a lot of people consider me to have an invisible disability, it doesn't mean that I still don't go through challenges today. So when I was a kid, around 2 years old, I had regressed, having some severe issues with noise led to some regression in my overall babbling, different sounds that I was making at the time. And beginning at 2, it really started to hit a peak. I was definitely afraid of bells, sirens, and any hypersensitive sounds. We carried noise canceling headphones with us around with us religiously. Another big thing that helped me with sensory processing when I was a kid was my parents got me a handicap sticker. Now, I would definitely recommend going to your state's website and see if, because of your child's diagnosed disability, if they're eligible for a handicap sticker. I couldn't go out in inclement weather, so this was a great help for me and my family when I was a kid. I also couldn't be bathed until I was 18 months old due to the textural feel of water on my skin. Most of my sensory challenges are hypersensitive. Some individuals with autism might have low sensitivity, others may have hypersensitivity. So I was always on the hyper end of the sensory challenges. Half of our loved ones have some form of picky eating challenges. I was one of the pickiest eaters you would ever meet, and we're going to talk a little bit about that later in today's presentation. But I asked for a bologna sandwich for breakfast, lunch, and dinner every single meal until I was 8 years old. And as parents who are probably watching this can know, that gets very, very jarring really quickly. But we worked on reward systems when I was a kid. Token systems worked really, really well, focused on the food pyramid to get me to the point where my reward was one of those precious bologna sandwiches. In addition to receiving over 15 hours of therapy when I was just starting off at 4, I also had an in-house occupational therapist to help with some of my transitional issues. I would kick the door every single time I was going into school because I didn't want to go from that transition to home to school. But then once I got used to that transition, I would kick the door when I was leaving the school because I didn't want to go through that transition again. So to help remedy some of those situations, my parents had an in-house occupational therapist that they paid out of pocket to show up 3 hours on Saturday and Sunday to help with some of my transitional issues. In addition to that, because of my fine motor challenges, I began really focusing on muscle training, especially in my hands, playing with GAC, rice, and also actually finding a key interest in typing. Today, I could type over 120 words per minute. So to help with some of my fine motor challenges, my parents got me into piano really early, and they got me into Maeve Beacon typing courses because they knew that I loved to type. Even though I was having challenges with writing on paper, they always found that I embraced technology in a great deal. So if I could leave you with a message today. So on my Facebook page, Kerry's Autism Journey, I share just some of my biggest thoughts and misconceptions that go on in the autism community and these memes. And one of my favorites is this one because of my sensory challenges. And I wish more people in our society, especially those who aren't personally impacted by autism, would understand that a child with autism isn't necessarily giving you a hard time, but having a hard time. This is in the same line of thought when growing up, some people thought that autism was caused by bad behavior, which is the most absolutely ridiculous thing I've ever heard in my life. We need our society to be more accepting of our community. Awareness is the first step, but it needs to lead to acceptance, understanding, and appreciation, because at the end of the day, there's so many individuals like myself who do want to connect with others and who do want to find our niche in this world. So my journey has led me to, I received a sport management degree at Seton Hall University. I wanted to grow up to be the next Larry Bird. So I could tell you, because it was with autism, I've always had laser focused on my key interests. I, growing up, could tell you all 30 NBA teams and every single player on one of those teams. So when I went to Seton Hall, I knew I wanted to do something in sport management. But once I graduated from college and realized there was not a lot being done to support those with disabilities like myself, I just decided to change career paths, receiving a scholarship from the National Speakers Association so I could go back to school and graduate with a degree in strategic communications. So that has been my journey for almost the past 10 years. And getting the opportunity to travel the globe, not only educate on neurodiversity, but speaking K through 12, speak to our local community, speak to our big businesses about hiring people with disabilities, and so much more. During that time, my other second big key interest was becoming the sixth member of the Backstreet Boys. I tried to wear many hats when I was a kid. And even though loud noises would bother me, once my parents got me integrated with music therapy, there was always something soothing about music. So once I got into kindergarten, I tried out for every single play I could. Realized right away I can't sing for the life of me. Have charisma though. If anyone ever sees me at karaoke, you'll probably see me the first one volunteering. But I absolutely fell in love with theater. So once I decided to become an autism advocate, I was receiving offers from our entertainment industry to become an autism entertainment consultant to make sure we were bringing a realistic portrayal of autism and disability to our entertainment industry. Getting to work on films such as Joyful Noise with Queen Latifah and Dolly Parton, Jane Wants a Boyfriend with Louisa Krause and Eliza Dushku, and then fall of 2019, HBO's Mrs. Fletcher, which has a nonverbal boy with autism who is part of that series. In addition to that, the poem I just shared with you is in one of my first books I ever wrote called Defining Autism from the Heart. I assumed it would be a nice Christmas gift for my family members, maybe sell 50 copies. But within 3 days in 2013, when it came out, it became an Amazon bestseller in special need parenting. And it gave us the opportunity to continue having a platform to discuss the spectrum of autism, getting the opportunity to write a book later about autism and relationships. If anyone has had the opportunity to check out on Netflix, Love on the Spectrum, we are having more conversations in our community, which I'm very happy about autism and dating, which is great because I feel like it often falls through the cracks in our community. And then finally, a children's book called I Will Light Up Blue to teach individuals who may not be autistic about other autistic children to make them a little bit more understanding. In addition to that, having a nonprofit where we provide scholarships, mentoring for those with special needs, and a video series called A Special Community, where every single place we go to speak, we bring a tripod and a camera and we sit down with self-advocates for 10 to 15 minutes at a time. And we ask them, what would you like the world to know about you? Not only in the hopes of breaking down barriers for those with special needs, but also giving them a platform where they can nurture their own self-advocacy. We received 501c3 status in 2012, so we could continue this effort, and we've been doing it ever since. And it's just been amazing to hear from so many amazing individuals within our communities. In addition to that, we've also worked with so many great groups such as ABC's The Good Doctor and Netflix's Atypical. The Good Doctor on ABC features a surgeon who's on the autism spectrum, and Atypical focuses on an 18-year-old with autism searching for love who is also attending college right now. I'm really excited to say that later this fall, because of my work in the entertainment industry, I'm going to be coming out with an ebook to focus even more on realistic portrayals of autism called Autism on Netflix, Disney Plus, and more, where I'm going to share reviews of some of the films and TV series that are currently going on that are having a realistic portrayal of autism and other disabilities, speaking from the Love on the Spectrum, the Atypical, The Good Doctor, Loop and Float, which are two shorts on Disney Plus, which I highly recommend if you haven't seen them already, because they have a main character who's on the autism spectrum, and so much more. So here's, and I'll give you a transition point for this before I show you this video. One thing I hope you can leave from today's presentation, and we'll leave some time at the end for Q&A for anyone who has any specific questions. But one big thing I really hope we can make people understand in our community is that autism truly is a spectrum. And if you met one individual with autism, you met just that one individual with autism. When I was working with Warner Brothers on Joyful Noise in 2010, one of the big things that we constantly were having conversations with, me and the director, Todd Graff, who filmed the movie, was the importance of making sure people understand there's no one size fits all when it comes to the autism spectrum. And this couldn't be portrayed any better than in this scene where the person I helped with his role, Dexter Darden, who is seen here, who plays a teenager who's on the autism spectrum, is having a very candid conversation with his mother in the film, Queen Latifah, about his autism diagnosis.
I just wish I could be normal for you, Mama. For me. Maybe you don't have to be anything except exactly who you are. To you. We broke the mold when we made you. And when someone don't fit into a neat little box, the answer ain't to squeeze them in there even harder. You build a bigger box.
So I absolutely love what Queen Latifah said there. And it said, don't squeeze them into a box, build a bigger box. It goes with the same concept, which we talk a lot about in our community, which is don't hit a square peg into a round hole because it will break the mold. We need, as a society, to establish a rapport. And I apologize because of the virtual elements of Zoom. Sometimes the videos end up being a little higher, a little bit lower, and those are just technical difficulties. So we apologize for that. At the end of this presentation, one of the things we'll actually do is when you fill out that short survey after you leave the Zoom today, not only will it ask for your email for contact hours, but it will also ask if you would like the PowerPoint slides from today's presentation, which will include all the videos so you can watch them at your leisure and also be able to turn them up a little bit more as physical copies of the actual presentation. So as soon as you leave the Zoom today, that survey will pop up in another window. And if you just click the link and fill out your email, we'll make sure that you receive the PowerPoint slides. And for Tatiana, we will, if we'll have a little box at the end that will say, if you would like to learn more about my journey, where you can get a list of all the movies and TV shows as well. So this was just one of the films that we started off with, and it led to a national movement where I have tried to work with the entertainment industry to have even more portrayals of autism. And I'm currently in the process of writing my first screenplay focused on an autistic protagonist. So I really hope that that has opportunity to come out in the next few years. So one quote that I came up with, which was actually really inspirational to my video series, was this. And it says, don't just read a book to learn about autism, learn by getting to know people who have autism. When I was just starting off in the public speaking world, I was one of the only self-advocates actually speaking about my autism. And there was really no other self-advocates who were at most of the conferences I was attending. And that was another big reason I started the video series that I did, because it's really important that we get first-person perspectives out there in our community. Later today, we are going to be doing a self-advocate town hall where we are going to be asking for self-advocates to actually share their thoughts on a wide range of topics that are impacting them in the autism community, because we understand the concept of nothing about us without us. And to truly understand inclusion and to be inclusive, that means bringing everyone's stories to the table. So we saw a lack of that in our community, and that's another big reason why we started our video series. In addition to being on the National Speakers Association team, I also have the wonderful opportunity to wear many hats in the autism community. Obviously, Autism Society of Maine. I serve on the Autism Society panel of advisors on the spectrum, in addition to the board of directors for the National Autism Association, a board member of a group called IBCCES, who do certified autism specialist certifications. In addition to that, they do certified autism center accreditations. You may have seen their NBC Lesser Halt story where Sesame Place, which is really cool because Julia just became one of the first Muppets with autism. Sesame Place actually received a certified autism accreditation, which means that they are more inclusive to those with autism. They train all their employees on individuals with special needs, and they receive that accreditation, which is really great. In addition to that, being a advisory member of Autism on the Seas as well. In addition to the two books I mentioned, one other acknowledgement I wanted to give really quickly is to a book called College for Students with Disabilities, We Do Belong, which I had the wonderful opportunity to collaborate with Dr. Temple Grandin and Dr. Stephen Shore. Dr. Temple Grandin is one of the most well-known self-advocates and also public speakers who's on the autism spectrum in the country. Obviously rose to fame from her film in 2011 based on her life on the autism spectrum. And then Dr. Stephen Shore is an internationally known speaker. We collaborated with 17 individuals with disabilities to talk about post-secondary and navigating post-secondary when you have a disability. So here's some things that I just wanted to share really quickly with all of you today on what my parents did very early on that really helped me when I was just diagnosed with autism when I was 4. And we already talked a little bit about this, but ruling out as many associated medical and mental health conditions as possible. You will not believe how many individuals we interview via our video series who have some form of dual diagnosis, whether it's ADHD, ADD, dysgraphia in many cases with individuals with fine motor challenges, other intellectual types of disabilities, epilepsy, apraxia. The list truly goes on and on. In my specific case, it was dysgraphia. However, I know, for example, they say indications from the CDC indicate that anywhere between 30 to 61% of our autism community also have ADHD. So one of the things I truly tell parents is try to talk to your child's pediatrician, your main physician, about ruling out as many conditions as you can, because that's the best way that you are going to be able to come up with a blueprint and a guide on how to get the best services needed for your child. In addition to that, one of the things that my parents really didn't have a grasp on when I was very, very young, which they had to fight day and night for, was trying to figure out treatments and services that were provided for our state of New Jersey. Now, one website that I would highly recommend checking out if you are not specifically sure what your state provides in terms of treatments and services is going to the American Speech Language Hearing Association website, because they actually have a list of all 50 state insurance mandates for autism spectrum disorders. So there might be something that might have fallen through the cracks that you might not know that you're eligible for, a potential grant that might be available in your specific state. Definitely check out that website, because there might be something that you might be currently paying out of pocket for right now that actually might be covered by your state. The second thing is I want everyone to have a better understanding of IDEA. So we're talking about the Individuals Disability Education Act. We have and as an IEP coach today, I can tell you that it's a very jarring list of things that are listed here for those with a wide range of special needs. The 13 medical conditions that are part of an IEP. In addition to that, if you look at the Department of Education website, which is simply doe.gov, you can learn a lot more about IDEA and also IEPs. I also recommend for those who are just starting their child in K through 12 for the first time, definitely look into an IEP coach who can help show you the ropes, especially early on, because that's going to be one big thing that my parents did for me. They documented everything, every little thing from developmental milestones I was reaching to certain sounds I was making, every little thing, because not only was that a great thing to share with my child's study team, but it also helped my child's study team understand some of the reasonable accommodations that could be part of my IEP because of that. I'd highly recommend, if you haven't already, Google search IEP coaches, because there might be something that could help you specifically. In addition to that, one of the other things my parents realized right away is that they needed to find a mentor. There was a lot of isolation that went on after that autism diagnosis, because it was simply, your son has PDD and OS, and they were kicked right out the door. Not that the people who diagnosed me didn't care, but it really was at a time where there was just not a lot of supports and understanding for those on the autism spectrum. So the big thing is you have to realize you can't do this alone. You have to find support systems. You have to look at groups such as the Autism Society of Maine. Kathy is amazing. And so many other affiliate chapters in the Autism Society of America, based on where you are, might be able to help. In addition to that, I would also recommend looking at the National Mentoring Resource Center.org, because even though they don't specifically have any special need mentoring groups, they have a wide range of free volunteer mentors who might be able to help you in other elements of your life, from mental health to healthy living, and so much more. In addition to that, some people say that this could be glass half full, glass half not. Looking into Facebook groups, I understand that there's a lot of toxicity in some Facebook groups, so you always have to take them with a grain of salt. But two groups that I currently host to support those in our autism community are just Autism Support Group on Facebook, which is a free group, which we now have over 2,000 members from around the world talking about topics impacting our autism community. And then we also have a supporter group called Kerry's Autism Village, who are people who pay just a little bit a month to be part of a supporter group where we include exclusive benefits such as giveaways, our books, et cetera, and so forth. But we also provide a supporter group for families who have a loved one impacted by a diagnosis in our special needs community. In addition to that, if you want to get a better sense of the teachers in your local communities, I highly recommend looking at the Facebook group Special Education Teachers. They have over 20,000 members on there from people across the country who might be able to help you out a little bit. And then finally, Asperger syndrome awareness. This was started from an autistic self-advocate in the UK, who also has a Facebook page, also called Asperger Syndrome Awareness, who shares a lot of great resources. Most of the moderators are adults who are on the autism spectrum. So when you post a question in one of those groups, you almost always hear back from somebody with that first person perspective, which is really, really great. One of the things my parents did early on to help me through these past 28 years was building on my social skills, because they realized right away that social skills were being overlooked in K through 12 for me. And one of the big things that they tried to grasp was focusing on goals in my development that were observable or measurable. So for example, talking to my child study team about things such as, I will greet my peers at least twice a week during group activities. Or instead of writing notes, I will ask my teacher for help when I don't understand a situation at least once a week. Being an only child, there was definitely a little bit more social isolation during my development, which made my parents really try to grasp social skills training from a very early age, as it wasn't an elective or even something my schools, especially my public school settings, were really emphasizing. So in addition to that, so I talked a little bit about our video series, and I can't tell you how important it is. If you've met one individual with autism, you met just that one individual with autism. So one of the very first individuals we ever got to interview was actually at an Autism Society, actually the Autism Society of Minnesota conference, where we met this incredible young boy named Liam, who wanted the world to know that sometimes because of having autism, it's hard to make connections and it's hard to make friendships. And this was Liam's story that started and kicked off our video series.
So we're going to be talking to the camera, and we want to make you famous. So we literally want to make you probably the most famous person on the planet. How's this sound?
Okay.
No pressure.
Autism basically makes it hard to connect. It makes it hard to get that connection, to make friends. They feel like more loners than, well, in groups. It's also a learning disability, and in some cases, it's hard. You can't speak in some cases. I met a kid called Tom, who he has autism, but he can't speak in proper English. He needs an iPad.
So Liam, one thing I want you to know is that I was actually diagnosed with autism at an early age too. And I don't know if I've ever actually told you that, but I want you to know that I will always be here to be your friend if you need a friend, okay?
Yeah.
Because even though it may be hard at times to connect to other people, you know, I feel like so many people with autism like us just want like what anyone else wants, you know, to feel connected and to have a friend. So blow that friend in me, okay? You want to pound this up?
Yeah.
You blow it up too. Oh, he blows it up. You're awesome, Liam.
I'm kind of tearing up. Sorry.
It's okay.
It's kind of emotional.
So this was Liam's first ever opportunity to tell anyone in his life about his autism diagnosis. And he wanted to do this video simply because he knew that there were other kids, and he was cognizant of this, just being a very young boy, that there were other kids struggling just like him, and he wanted to be a self-advocate for them, which was so brave. His video went viral when we posted it on our Facebook page. But one of the greatest things that came from it also was all the positive feedback. He was receiving messages from teachers, kids his own age, parents, who simply wanted him to know that you will find connections and you will find friendships one day. And now he's a teenager today, and I'm so happy to say he does have a few friends. And we realized that we can not only celebrate neurodiversity while doing this video series, but we could also help give all these kids something to feel proud of. And that is something that I think for the 18-month-old with Down syndrome we worked with in the Bahamas, all the way to the 60-year-old man we interviewed with cerebral palsy. Something that so many of these individuals truly, truly appreciate, just having the opportunity to let their voice be heard. Most of our videos receive at least 10,000 views, and it helps so many other individuals. I mean, for example, we've had other public speakers on the autism spectrum actually receive speaking engagements after being part of our video series. So it's given them the opportunity to also make some revenue along the way as part of our nonprofit. So it's been really great to see. So one thing, like Liam's mom, and some of the videos we're going to share today, we're going to share some things that are helping these individuals, because again, autism is a spectrum, and it's not only my story, but so many stories that we could learn so much about. Like Liam's mom, consider having a dialogue about your child's diagnosis with them sooner rather than later. Now, Liam's mom learned about autism at a very, very early time during his adolescence, and decided to have the conversation when he was just starting kindergarten. And one of the big things that she told him is that autism doesn't make you any less of a person. I didn't learn that I had autism until I was 11 and a half, where we were playing Disabilities Celebrity Bingo in one of our social skills classes. And we were learning that individuals like Michael Jordan has ADD, Magic Johnson has ADHD, Leonardo DiCaprio has dyslexia. And at the end of the class, the teacher said, all these individuals are special, just like you. So obviously I was curious. I raised my hand and asked, so why am I special? And she said that I had to talk to my parents about that. So I sat down with my parents right after school that day, and that was the first time they ever told me about my autism diagnosis. And it was life-changing. From so many years of knowing that I was special, but not knowing what that meant. I see from so many self-advocates it being one of the most life-changing things for them, because it also helps us have a larger conversation about self-advocacy. I think it's very important that our kids start self-advocating for themselves from a very early age. One of the things I did as soon as I found my autism diagnosis is I wanted to learn more about my strengths and weaknesses. So I decided to start staying in on my IEP meetings to learn more about what my accommodations were in school, so I can understand a little bit more about my strengths and challenges. Challenges like my sensory challenges, strengths such as my ability to focus on certain interests for long periods of time, and to have a better understanding of that. In addition to that, one of the things that I realized once I got to college was that most of our autism community were having challenges with test taking. Now, sometimes this is an unpopular opinion, but I don't think Common Core is the answer in our school systems, because I feel like a lot of the time it's not focused on the way that our children learn, our students learn, especially those with autism and other disabilities. So once I got to college, I received very minimal scholarship aid because I was a terrible test taker. And what most colleges were looking for was SAT scores and GPA. I had a 3.9 GPA graduating from high school, but my SAT scores were low. So I received very minimal aid. And I realized that that was something impacting a lot of individuals in our autism community. So because of that, I started a scholarship program called the Making a Difference for Autism Scholarship Program, where now we've given out 86 scholarships for students with autism to go to college. And one of the individuals who won one of these scholarships is a young woman named Rachel, who had a very unique story about growing up with autism that I wanted to share with all of you today.
What would you like for people to know about you?
About me? Well, there's so many things. I think that, well, there's not really anything juicy. So many people think that you have a juicy secret that you're keeping, and then you reveal it, and then people aren't interested anymore. But if you must know, I will say that I have 2 cats, and I'm not sure whether they're gay or not. But I
I love them very much because they're my big fluffy babies, and it doesn't matter whether they're gay or straight, autistic or neurotypical, I would love them no matter what. I was diagnosed when I was 3. I can clearly remember being in preschool, and my mom was called into the office, and I could just listen to the teachers talking to her, and they're just saying, she is not right. She has a few screws loose. She'll never make any friends, because I'd always sit alone in the corner while everyone was just playing with their friends or their dolls. And they just didn't know how to handle someone with autism. And my mom just had a fit. She's like, I'll be damned if my kid doesn't make any friends.
There you go.
So she read all these books about autism, and without her, I just wouldn't be here today.
So for everyone at home, Rachel is actually one of our scholarship winners. She won the KFM Making a Difference Award for students with autism who are currently pursuing a post-secondary education. And Rachel, when did you first know that you wanted to go to college for the first time?
Well, I think I've always wanted to go ever since I was a little girl. I know I've always wanted to go. I wanted to because, when I was little, I used to play school. That's what I was trying to get in my head. I would play school, and I'd pretend I would be in college, and that's basically it. Because I always loved school. I wasn't gonna let autism stop me.
We absolutely adore Rachel, because Rachel is just one of those individuals who lightens up a room. And we realized right away when we met her for the first time that we needed to give her a platform to share her story. And once we posted her story on our Facebook page, it received over 250,000 views. And now today, I can say that she was one of the first women with autism to ever compete for the title of Miss Florida. And one of her hopes and goals for the future is to start a school for those with special needs when she gets a little bit older. So, and one of the things that helped Rachel, which really wasn't something that helped me specifically, was visual schedules. Now, there is a fantastic resource that I hope all of you check out at some point, because it's great for so many people, regardless if you have a child in early intervention or an adult who is having some challenges with routine. And it's called the Autism Speaks ATN AIRP Visual Supports Toolkit. Autism Speaks provides over 40 free toolkits, ranging from everything from the first 100 days somebody is diagnosed with autism, all the way to receiving a diagnosis for an adult later in life. And this is one of my favorite suggestions, because it also talks about social stories in the kit. All of these are free, by the way, to take advantage of. And it includes things such as reminder strips, such as things that you could put in your bathroom, things that you could put in a public place in your house, which could help with things such as hygiene, eating all of your meals, being able to get ready to go to the school bus at the beginning of the day, and so much more. This is also really important right now because of COVID-19 and how so many of our loved ones' routines have been vastly changed, because many of us are still virtual learning. Some of us are going back to school, but it's looking completely different compared to what it was before COVID-19. So being able to have these visual schedules and try to put in some routine is really, really important. If at the end, I'll share a link to this fabulous resource from a fellow autism mom who actually came out with a template daily schedule that she uses for her loved one during virtual learning. So now we give out this scholarship every spring, and I'm so happy to say we've given out 86 scholarships in the past 7 years. Our next scholarship comes out on April 26th is the application deadline. And one of the great things we're doing with all of these essays that all the applicants wrote is that we're actually turning it to a book called Living with Autism, Stories You Need to Hear, where 100% of the proceeds from that book will go back to the Autism Scholarship Fund. So we could hopefully make that Autism Scholarship Fund self-sufficient so we can continue to give out scholarships for many, many years to come as our kids grow up. So obviously, one of the other big challenges that many of us are facing right now is obviously not being able to go out. So one of the things I'll say right before this video is that we did this video a few years ago. We realized that there were a lot of kids with autism and special needs who were having a lot of issues around the holiday season, being able to do things such as go out trick-or-treating, be able to meet Santa, be able to go out and meet the Easter Bunny because of their sensory challenges. So a lot of people asked us right away, what were we doing to help support younger children who are on the autism spectrum? So one of the ways we decided to get involved was with a very special event that we wanted to share a little bit with you today.
Sarah Callaghy had a one-of-a-kind meeting with Santa. The 8-year-old has autism and is nonverbal. Her father brought her to this event because this Santa's helper understands the challenges of autism firsthand.
Santa also has autism. Such a special connection, special bond.
The helper is actually 28-year-old Kerry Magro. Diagnosed at 4, his sensory challenges prevented him from visiting Santa as a child. He created this event so others like him don't miss out.
This event is more inclusive because we dim the lights, we turn down the sound and try to help them as much as we can.
Just a great job. It just takes his time. There's no rush.
Most of the elves and Mrs. Claus are occupational therapists and special education teachers. The team visited with 181 special needs families, including 4-year-old Rusty Marsh. Is this the first time you've seen Santa?
Yes.
Is it?
Yes.
And was he a nice Santa?
Yes.
With 1 in 68 children diagnosed with autism, Magro hopes to inspire more sensory-friendly events all year round.
Autism doesn't stop in December. It doesn't stop during Christmas.
I want everybody to be happy.
Santa says,
This is the best Christmas gift of all.
this is the 3rd year of the event, and Magro's mom is one of those jolly elves.
So 6 years ago, we decided to come out with one of the first autism and sensory friendly Santa events in our hometown of Jersey City, New Jersey. And we realized, because I shared a lot about my personal experiences, never being able to see Santa as a child due to my sensory challenges, never being able to go to a public mall where there were so many bright lights, so many loud noises that would affect me, and really not understanding the function of all that. So now we've been able to host over 500 kids with special needs. And one of the cool things we're doing this year is we're actually doing it as a virtual event. So later today, we're actually hosting a virtual Halloween event for individuals with sensory challenges and autoimmune disorders, so they can experience Halloween even though we are indoors. So these are just some ideas for your area, and definitely recommendations if you know of a local autism affiliate chapter, Autism Society affiliate chapter, if you know of any local autism groups. These might be some things that you might want to look into, specifically more focused after COVID-19 ends and being able to do a few more events in the public. Things such as sensory trick-or-treat, unified playgrounds, unified sports. If you go to the Special Olympics website, they have a lot of great examples of the unified playgrounds, the unified sports, and the unified programs within the schools, which unified really focuses on inclusive behavior between individuals without disabilities getting to interact with people who do have disabilities, which I think is a great, great initiative that more schools should be doing. In addition to that, sensory friendly Santa, Easter events. Again, like I mentioned in the video, autism is 365. We need to find ways of making the world a more inclusive place for all of our loved ones all year round. In addition to that, AMC Theaters has an initiative where on the second and fourth Thursday, Tuesday and Thursday, I believe, every single month, they open their theaters up at 10 a.m. and they have a sensory-friendly movie screening for those with special needs, where they turn the lights up. And as someone who's actually gone to one of these screenings, one of the best things that comes from it is that there's literally no judgment. Kids can literally stim, they can twirl, and they're just around a bunch of families who get it. And I think that's one of the best things that I see from any of these events, is that kids can just feel free to be themselves without feeling judged. In addition to that, Broadway has the Autism Theater Initiative, where every Broadway season they host a autism-friendly Broadway show, which is really, really great. In addition to that, if you're just trying to figure out what sensory-friendly events look like, paautism.org have an amazing one-sheet PDF, which explain the things that we were just talking about, how to focus on all 5 senses, how to make sure that the lights are the right way, the sound is the right way, and who to get involved to become part of these events. For our Santa events, for example, we always make sure that we have at least a few special education teachers and occupational therapists who really focus and specialize on sensory challenges all year round. Just in the spirit of time, we're going to pass this one, but once you guys get the PowerPoint slides, you'll be able to see this little nuggets video. Evan, we not only focus on autism on our video series, but we focus on anyone who's impacted by a diagnosis. So Evan was diagnosed with brittle bone disease. And Evan is currently looking to have his bathroom actually renovated, which is going to cost about $40,000 because he can't hold his head up by himself. One of the big challenges that his parents are trying to figure out is how to do an all-inclusive bathroom for their little Evan. So not only has our video series been able to be an educational tool for our community, but it's also helped us fundraise for people in our community who are low on funds, especially at times like during COVID-19. So once we posted Evan's video, he was able to raise over $2,500 almost overnight once we shared a little bit about his journey and some of the challenges that he is currently facing and what he wants the world to know about his story. One recommendation that we are giving to more schools, which kind of goes in place with the sensory focus, but then also the inclusion focus, is PECS board for schools who have nonverbal students. Now, this was a PECS board that was done by the Elizabethtown Education Foundation, which you can learn a little bit more about their group via this link right down here at the bottom. The Elizabethtown Education Foundation actually gave a grant to a local school in their area who had several nonverbal children to actually create a PECS board for their recess area to help nonverbal children interact with other students. And I think this is just a great way of being a little bit more inclusive. Actually, a lot of unified playgrounds are starting to integrate these. So if you're interested in potentially doing this in your local area, I highly recommend check out the Elizabethtown Education Foundation for more information. But one of the things we realized right away once we started doing the videos and we started hearing more about people in our autism community is that we really need to do justice for the spectrum. Now, I truly wish more people understood that autism is the spectrum, because my parents, the first way they found out about autism was 1991. I was just saying my first few words and my parents were watching the movie Rain Man, where they found out that they basically found all the stereotypes about autism. They assumed that everyone with autism was a boy. Every single person with autism had a photogenic memory, and every single person with autism could win you $88,000 for the blackjack tables once they got older. And that's not the case in our autism community. And one of the things that we truly hate is when people use functioning labels, such as high functioning and low functioning. So one of the things we decided to do with our video series is we realized right away we need to highlight the entire spectrum of autism. So we met this incredible young boy when we were doing an educational video series in the Bahamas, where we were trying to encourage their government officials to provide more services for those with special needs there. On an island that has over 7,000 people on it, on the entire island, there's only 3 occupational therapists, no physical therapist, no speech therapist, and no ABA therapist. So we educated, we did videos with 9 self-advocates, 7 individuals with autism, and 2 individuals with Down syndrome, in the hopes of getting more funding in their local area. And this is one of the stories of a young man who, for the most part, is nonverbal, but communicates a little bit on the iPad. And he had a very unique story that he wanted to share along with his mom.
Wicked can say hi. It's a fun camera, isn't it? You're amazing. Okay, yeah. Awesome.
Vasi is 9.
Yeah.
And he's on the autism spectrum. Functionally non-verbal, but we do get words from time to time. Sentences actually from time to time, but very infrequently. One of my hopes is really that we find a way that he is comfortable communicating. Right now he is using a lot of tap to talk, on the iPad, but I really would like to see it develop a little bit more into not just asking for something, but communicating something. Like, I had a good day. It's just that I need to reach him where he is. And, he's an awesome kid if you get to know him.
It definitely seems like it. Is there anything else that you would for people to know at home? Your story, but also your son's story?
I think we need more awareness, and I think people just need to be a little bit more aware. When you see a child throwing a tantrum in a supermarket or screaming on an airplane, it's not that the child is acting out. It may just be that the child needs, the environment is different, and they're having a hard time. There's a lot of judgment, and I really wish that people would just stop and just let go of the judgment and just try to understand. Because if you ask me, if we're in a supermarket and he has a moment, it's okay, and I could explain, it's just, this is what is happening today. That's so much better than saying
So one of the most important things we realized after we did this video was how happy he was that the video was published. And he communicated with me afterwards, even though in the Bahamas that day it was over 90 degrees. He was with a school that has no air conditioning, and he was having some difficulties at the time. And he wanted us to know that he appreciated us posting his video. And at first we were like, well, this is like, he was obviously stimming and was twirling, and he was having some other issues, but he just wanted the world to know that there are individuals who do need supports just like him. And that was so, to have that ability to be that cognizant at that age was just truly remarkable. But it also made us realize that we need to make sure that when we're doing our videos that we're highlighting the entire spectrum. At first, we received unsolicited comments from people saying that we only supported a certain type of autism. We only focused on a certain type of special needs. And we found that very disheartening. And it made us really understand and grasp a little bit more about the spectrum and making sure that we're including as many voices in our community as possible. It also gave us opportunity with his video. Once it went viral, it went on the Facebook page Love What Matters, who have over 8 million Facebook followers. we got to talk a lot more about things such as the long-term supportive services for those on the autism spectrum, to talk about guardianship for those on the autism spectrum, and a wide range of other topics such as assistive housing, assistive living, et cetera, and so forth. So what helped me, especially as a nonverbal child, even though I said my first word when I was 3, my parents truly embraced technology. We looked at everything from augmented communication to PECs. In addition to that, one of the things my parents did, which was really important, was they gave me some time and space before they actually responded. They would ask me a question and then they would just wait. They wouldn't rush if I didn't make the comment right away. And that was really important for my development, because a lot of the time I was just trying to figure out the world around me. But once I did respond. Even though it wasn't at words at first, I always had babbling and I always made different sounds. And the importance of that was my parents tried to pick up on that. They tried to mimic sounds to meet me where I was in my own development. Another big thing that helped with my communication was music. It started out on the communication end, and then once my sensory challenges started to peak a little bit, it focused on the sensory end. And my parents would sing nursery rhymes, and we would really focus on, actually, I would listen to Mozart as a kid to help with some of, they talk a lot about if you play Mozart for your child, especially when they're very, very young, it can help with memory, which is really, really interesting. So my parents did a lot of that for me when I was a child as well. And it was really, really impactful, because I would mimic different sounds that I would hear from a Marvin Gaye album. And it would just help me. And that's one of the big things we also say in our community. The key is communication, not speech. I see a lot of families who get very disheartened by the fact that their child hasn't started speaking yet. But we also have to make sure that we are checking out as many avenues as possible from augmented communication. We have devices now, such as the Toby Lightwriter assistive speech tools. We have Proloquo to go. So we have ways of helping. In addition to that, looking at other things such as American Sign Language as a possible avenue as well. In addition to that, one recommendation I have for anyone whose child is having difficulties with just communicating overall right now is doing a self-assessment called the Communication Matrix. This communication matrix can be used for free on communicationmatrix.org. And it's a skill assessment to understand your child's communication, regardless if they have an autism diagnosis or not. So it looks at possible communication behaviors such as pre-attentional, intentional, and unconventional. So definitely check out their website, because it's a fabulous tool to learn a little bit more about how your child communicates on their level. But as we were just mentioning, long-term supportive services, one area which we'll actually talk a lot about in the Self-Advocate Town Hall later today is that 500,000 children with autism are going to become adults with autism in the next decade. And we are not ready for them as a society. The statistics are shocking. Most individuals with autism to this day are still unemployed or underemployed. Only about 1 in every 3 students with autism actually attend a post-secondary education. And the majority of our loved ones who are on the autism spectrum, who are young adults, are still living with their aging parents. We need to do a better job of discussing that most publicly funded services for our loved ones fall as soon as they turn the age of 21. Start at 18 in some places and then fall off dramatically once the age cliff happens, once they turn 21. But we also need to help our loved ones who might be being diagnosed in adulthood today. One of the things we're seeing across the board are individuals who are being diagnosed in adulthood and have very limited services available to them. And this is why we love this video that we did with a woman named Nellie, who didn't find out that she had autism until she was 53 years old. And this is a little bit that we want to share with you about Nellie's story.
I was diagnosed at age 53 in December of 2014. It was so life-changing for me after a lifetime of struggles and not knowing what was going on and just thinking I was stupid. Really, I grew up with struggles comprehending and understanding and friendship. I was even hospitalized in 2008 for almost a month with depression and OCD and anxiety, and never knowing what was going on, and no one knew to look.
What would you like the world to know out there about your story? Just anything at all.
Persevere, be strong. Friendships that didn't work, all of those things shifted in that moment. And since that time, and it's been over 2 years, everything is being reframed about who I am and what's important and what I want to do in my life. I feel like I'm a kid again, and I've been born over again. And part of me gets a little frustrated and angry about that because I am 56 now, and it's like I wish I knew now what I knew. My diagnosis now, that I had known it earlier.
You always have to love when technology sometimes gets a little weird on us all. But Nellie's story is unique because, again, she was diagnosed at 53 years old, and she dealt with years of misdiagnoses and not knowing why she was special, like I mentioned with my own understanding of my autism diagnosis when I was 11. So it's really, really important that while we continue to have conversations about autism, that we are that we are having longer talks about not only supportive services for those who are adults, but also finding support groups for them as well. Because most support groups are focused specifically on teenagers and young adults, but we need to focus on support groups as well for older individuals who are on the spectrum who need supports as well. So, in addition to all that, my parents started planning for my adulthood when I was a child. And you would be shocked. So I gave a TEDx talk in 2014 called What Happens to Children with Autism When They Become Adults with Autism. And we talk about a lot of the topics. We'll talk about the Self-Advocate Town Hall. We talk about college, we talk about housing, we talk about employment. But one of the other things we talk about is special needs financial planning and how so many families don't even have a will set for their child, let alone their adult who's on the spectrum. So it's really important that you talk to a financial advisor in your local area. See if you can find somebody who might be able to do pro bono services if you're lacking funds right now to have this service provided to you. And then also look to see if your state has eligible ABLE accounts. ABLE is just called the Achieving the Better Life Expectancy Act, and it focuses on tax-free savings accounts for diagnosed children with disabilities, so you could start saving for them now as they are children for the future. And also preparing for guardianship. It can't be overstated enough. You should really have a plan in place of who will look for after your child when you are gone, especially somebody who has high support needs, who might need that assistance as they get into adulthood. In addition to that, one of my biggest challenges from the past 28 years was puberty. Puberty led to a lot of aggressive behaviors for myself because I didn't know why my body was changing, because there was really not a great understanding of health classes when I was in a private school for kids with learning disabilities. So I had a lack of understanding. I also dealt with a lot of childhood bullying because I would try to befriend bullies. Even though I was receiving negative attention, I was receiving some form of attention. So it's really important that we're having role-playing situations where we can actually go through scenarios with our children on why their bodies are changing right now, why bullies might do what they're doing, how to speak up and communicate in certain situations when somebody might be bullying you or harassing you in a certain way. We need to continue to have those conversations. In addition to that, Autism Speaks also has a great toolkit that I recommend called the Challenging Behaviors Toolkit, which actually has a section that's focused primarily on puberty as well. And also consider cognitive behavioral therapy. I again say there's no one size fits all when it comes to autism. The therapies that worked well for me might not work well for the next person you meet who's on the spectrum. But cognitive behavioral therapy I absolutely like because it gives us the opportunity to, what it does in most essences, it looks at negative thoughts that you might have in your head and tries to bring you and transition you to an area where you're thinking about positive thoughts. So it's a great way, especially if you're seeing a loved one who might have aggressive behaviors. In addition to that, in these past 28 years from then till now, one of the other areas that I see fall through the cracks a lot in our community is dating. I can't tell you how many of the times I work with my mentees where 85, 90% of the time, they don't want to talk about mock interviews. They don't want to talk about writing a resume. They don't want to talk about post-secondary. They want to talk about the cute boy and cute girl and how they can go about having a boyfriend, having a girlfriend. One thing we have to make sure people understand is that not everyone on the spectrum is going to want to be in a relationship. So we can't force that upon some people. Temple Grandin is a great example. She says that her passion and her love in her life is her work. And she has never saw herself getting into a relationship, raising a family. And that's okay. We have to stop with the whole sense that you become an adult and then you have to get married. You have to have kids. That might not be the end goal for every single person in our community. If it is, though, and somebody does want to get into a romantic relationship, we definitely have to make sure, at first and foremost, that they understand levels of intimacy, how to deal with rejection, because it happens to everybody, and explaining the 5 levels of grief in a coherent way. Role-playing different scenarios, which will help, especially for those who have challenges understanding nonverbal communication, especially when it comes to body language and facial cues. And then also another big topic, disclosing a diagnosis to a potential partner when there might be certain characteristics that might be a little bit more present that they might want to bring up, and how to go about doing that in the best way possible. This is a lot of the stuff I talk about in my mentoring services I provide to individuals, in addition to my book, Autism and Falling in Love. These are some apps that have helped me in the past 28 years, specifically focused on my transition to adulthood. The first 2 I truly love. They're meditation apps, which if you have a iPad or simply a Android or smartphone, you can download. First is called Calm. It's a daily meditation app that you can do for 5 minutes, 30 minutes a day. I recommend, especially if you have a loved one who's going to college or an individual who's starting a job placement for the first time, to start finding ways of using meditation as a way of coming back to a place of zen. I still use a sensory brush to this day that's basically the size of the palm of my hand, which half the side is bristles, half the side is the smooth surface. And when I'm going through any unexpected sensory challenges at the time, if there are any loud, unexpected noises that I wasn't expecting, I use that brush to come back to a place of normalcy. These meditation apps kind of do the same realm for some individuals. In addition to that, if your child is having difficulties with time management or transitional issues, I would look at Clear, which keeps track of current school assignments, and then also if you have your child do any household chores or any activities around the household, it keeps it all in one concise place. It's basically a binder for your phone, which is really great. And then Wunderlist, which is more focused on college students, which helps create a list of tasks. If your child decides to live in a dorm for the first time, live away from home, it's a list that you can share with a loved one, a job coach, other family members to help your child stay on task. So our video series has given us the opportunity to highlight over 135 self-advocates from across the globe. Our videos have been seen over 30 million times, and today we have found people from our community who have donated just $3 a month, in some cases $5 a month in other cases. So hopefully one day we can make our nonprofit self-sufficient, so we can make this our full-time job, so we can start doing a little less public speaking and just keep the focus on our loved ones in our community and celebrating neurodiversity and so much more in our communities. I did mention that I was a victim of bullying. Today's the last day of October, and October is National Bullying Prevention Month. When people ask me what my biggest challenges were growing up on the autism spectrum, the three that come up the most were sensory communication and being a victim of bullying. And a lot of people don't know this, but you can actually put in parameters in your child's IEP focus on bullying prevention, from individuals who might have bullied your child in the past to different scenarios where there might be specific training that might be able to be provided by a speech therapist to help in situations about specifically speaking up when somebody might be bullying and going to an authority figure to make sure that that bullying situation doesn't happen again. For me, it was, I didn't have the ability to defend myself, but I also didn't understand negative attention versus positive attention in many instances. I just wanted attention. So I would befriend bullies a lot of the time because of that. And that's why role playing and social skills training is really, really key. In addition to having our schools bring in speakers who can actually talk about bullying and the impact that it has on individuals in our community. One individual who I highlight in our video series who really brings this full circle on why bullying is such a difficult challenge in our community is this wonderful, wonderful woman named Kristen, who was bullied so severely it had very lasting challenges. And we share this video in mostly middle schools and high schools to really get the point across that bullying does have lasting impacts on people in our community.
What would you like for people at home to know about you?
I've been through a lot, and if you just give me a chance, I'm a very bright, talented, pretty cool person. I'm a painter, I'm a writer, and I've written a couple books, and I like to do some acting. I'm very multi-talented. I also like to make music. Actually, I could say my greatest accomplishment was pushing through. I have because of the bullying, I have a lot of depression that I've actually, can I say, I've tried to commit suicide many times, and something in my mind, I don't know, just tells me that it's gonna get better, and then I'm gonna be something one day, and
You aren't gonna be something one day. You're something right now.
I don't feel that way.
But you do amazing art. You've kind of like flourished. I mean, You got the punk rock thing still coming on. So I mean, you do have things going on in your life, and I was a victim of bullying too. I'm so sorry that you had to go through that.
It's quite often, you know, I've tried to rack my brains around it, and it's just, I think one of the biggest things is that I'm just alone all the time. You know, I don't have a group of friends, and I get attacked in public by people. You know, I'm a very easy target, and this happened my whole life, and it happens so often. I'm almost afraid to leave my house, you know.
I just want you to know, it's like there are people out there in our community who want to be your friend. From people such as myself who friends with countless sub-advocates and just friends with people. There are people out there in our community who want to be your friend.
It is so it's so challenging to hear stories like Kristen's, but it's so true that we need to do more for those in our community who are being bullied, which is why we love doing videos to highlight the significant challenges that bullying do have in our communities for those individuals. And one memory that I remember so vividly was when I went to a middle school last year, and I showed Kristen's video, and the middle schooler came up to me afterwards and he said, "Kerry, I never knew people could feel the way that Kristen did. And I want you to know that I'm never going to bully anyone again because I know it could impact people like Kristen." And if I never get another speaking engagement for the rest of my life, that is always going to have a lasting impact for me, to know that Kristen's story could have, saved a kid in the future. It was just so powerful. So finally, before we have questions, I just wanted to share 10 quick things as an overview of really what helped me in the past 28 years. One of the things was self-advocating for myself. I mentioned that I started singing on my IEP meetings. But once I got to college, I went up to my disability support specialist and I said, "Hey, if you could hook me up with that IEP, I'll be ready to go." And that was the first time I ever learned about 504 reasonable accommodations. I never received any form of transitional services that helped me understand that transition. We need to prepare our kids for the future today. And that means getting them more actively involved in their academics, getting them more actively involved in their IEP process so they can understand what the future might look like in store. And then finding, as they get into those teenage years, a transition plan to get them ready for their time out of school. Role playing is something more and more of our families need to do. You could focus on visual schedules. You could focus on video modeling. If you go on YouTube and you just type in role playing and autism, you will see so many videos of scenarios that we're just talking about today that might be able to help your loved one. Servant leadership. I feel like, especially for myself, one of the biggest challenges I have with autism today is that I still have some mind blindness. And sometimes I have difficulties understanding the perspectives of others. And that's why community service is really important for our kids, because even if they could find something they really enjoy, a key interest in the service that they're doing, and they could do that for 5-10 hours a year, to understand how some other individuals in our community often struggle, not only those with autism, but there are a lot of people struggling right now. That's a great way of just helping your loved ones understand the world in a larger perspective. Learning from other self-advocates. Peer mentoring is really key. If you go to that website that I mentioned in the beginning, nationalmentoringresourcecenter.org, you can also learn about how you can actually bring a peer mentoring program to your child's school. Because not only does that help in terms of decreasing isolation for our loved ones, but it also helps establish friendships and social skills as these kids get older. I already mentioned it, but cognitive behavioral therapy was really positive for me during my journey. Self-reflection. If you just doing a Google search journal therapy after this presentation, I think it's really important that our kids, while we're focusing on this aspect of transition, that they think with the end in mind. They think about short-term goals they have for themselves and long-term goals for themselves along the way as well. As we learn more about how different conditions are affected in our community, we understand that physical activity is really, really important for 30 minutes a day in terms of short-term and long-term retention. Finding support networks as well. Autism Society of Maine. Kathy just popped right back up. So she is amazing. Definitely get involved with the Autism Society of Maine. And then finally, sharing your voice, because 1 in 5 individuals have a disability today in our community. And people with disabilities are often the most underserved in our community because of the impact of their disability and the high support needs of their disability. So we need all of our voices to the table because we're one of the most underrepresented when it comes to politics. But in terms of our grassroots efforts, they're also the most underrepresented. So we need to hear from you. We need your voices shared on social media. We need your voices voting on November 3rd to make sure that our community don't fall through the cracks. So finally, I have one last video to share with all of you. It's from one of my favorite people in my world. Temple Grandin says interests and talents can turn into careers. If I leave you with anything today, my parents in the past 28 years, they realized the importance of nurturing strengths. And there's no one better I know who's done this than this amazing young boy named Calum, who, when I asked him if he wanted to be part of our video series, he said, I just want the world to know that I love Whitney Houston songs. And she's great. I love Whitney Houston songs too. And we got him started with music therapy. And after a few years, when he mustered up the courage to be part of our video series, this is the video he sent to us.
Should stay, I would leave you away. So I go, but I know I'll think of you every step of the way. And I will always love you. I will always love you. My darling.
So once this video went on her page, it went viral, receiving, and again, most of the self-advocates, some of them just want to share their amazing talents, received over 3.3 million views. Within a week, he had received a record deal in London. And 6 months after that, he auditioned for Britain's Got Talent with Simon Cowell and finished as a top 10 finalist. So I say that autism can't define me, and I define autism. And no matter where you're a parent, you're an educator, a self-advocate, that I hope you can help your loved ones and yourself define your lives and your journeys in the way that you best see it every single day. Thank you all so much for having me, and I would love to answer any questions that any of you have at this time. Feel free to post them in the Q&A box, and we will get to a few of them today. And then if any of you are interested in emailing me with any specific questions that we don't get to, feel free to contact me at kerrymagro@gmail.com.
So I'm just going to jump in and say thank you so much, Kerry, for doing what you do and showcasing really the spectrum, not just one end versus another end, but it's a whole spectrum. And that's what we try to install in some parents too. Because I think sometimes when they have a diagnosis, they feel over here, but you know, it's a spectrum, and individuals grow and you know, they help along the way. I did want to announce the winners of your book. So if I could do that while you're looking at some of the questions, that would be awesome. So Autism and Falling in Love, the one that got away, Catherine Landon is going to be getting that. If I called your name and you're on, just send us an email to asm@asmonline.org. And I don't know if you want to put that in your chat box so they know the email address, and I will get this out to her. So defining autism from the heart, Tatiana Doan. So we're going to be sending that out to you, Tatiana. Send us your address. We might have that one. That's a very familiar name to me. And then I will light it up blue. It's going to go to Carol Warda, Werda. I hope I said it right. So send us your address and we will get that off to you also. And to remind everybody, while Carrie's looking at questions, I've seen a lot in the chat box about transitional services, and my segment at 1 o'clock today is talking about transitioning from high school to adult. And we're going to go over a number of different categories in that. So if you haven't signed up for that, please do. It starts at 1 o'clock. So go ahead, Kerry.
Absolutely. So Roxanne came in on the Q&A, and if anyone sees the Q&A box on the top, feel free to write your question in there and we'll try to get to as many as we can. So Roxanne wrote, I teach students with autism in a special needs classroom. I live in Maine. I'm working with students on various needs. We're dealing with lots of issues with routines and transitions because of COVID-19. How do you motivate students with autism to wake up early in the morning and go to school? Several of our students with autism are having trouble getting up and going to school and having to go remote because parents are having a struggle every morning getting them to school. Some are having trouble working at home and at school after being gone from school so long because of COVID-19. We're also dealing with students who have issues with dealing with stress while working on the computer to do various assignments. How do you help a student who's overwhelmed with stress to concentrate on their work? Roxanne, so there's two really interesting questions in there. The first one about how to get them interested in going to school. Now, reward systems are key. They were key because I was that kid who didn't want, before COVID-19, I didn't want to wake up and go to school. So you always need to focus. Token systems are great. If you literally just type in a Google search and token systems and encourage parents to give their kids rewards for going to school, helping build on some motivation in that way, especially early on, is really, really key. Also, definitely trying to figure out what classes in school they enjoy the most, and definitely talking, if possible, to a parent teacher conference member and seeing how there might be ways of collaborating on some of their special interests during the school day as a reward system for themselves to get them encouraged to go to school. The second question you mentioned, how do you help a student concentrate on their work? I mean, it's really case by case in that. One of the things I definitely recommend is trying to figure out what type of learner they are. If they're a visual learner, they might focus more on visuals to help them learn. If they're more audio based, it might be, for example, having their sessions recorded and being able to listen to them afterwards to help them out a little bit. So it's really focused on finding what type of learner they are and then finding ways to help them concentrate in that way. And this with, especially with specific reasonable accommodations that they might be able to get as part of their IEP as well. Really just meeting them where they are in their development and focusing on what their interests are to help them when it comes to concentration. So Mary Bishop writes in, with my daughter experiencing bullying in 9th grade, she used to be social, and this has now set her back socially due to being bullied by teachers and peers at her old school. She is 16 now. How is the best way to help her get back to her social happy self that she was? We did do counseling and now homeschool, but I'm not sure if I'm doing enough. Yeah, Mary, I would definitely recommend seeing, and I don't know if you're based in Maine or where you're based, but I know that a lot of autism-related groups have been doing social skills groups virtually as part of their nonprofit associations. Okay, you are from Maine, got it. So I would definitely, and Kathy, you might be able to help answer this question as well, especially to help her get back into the social world. Are there any current programs that you know in Maine that focus primarily on just getting teenagers together, young adults together?
Well, I know that us, the Autism Society of Maine, we do have 3 different support groups that we do. 2 of them are virtual, and we are going to try to start back up with our in-person one. I think from our experience, we find that individuals like to be around each other, and we got to provide more opportunities for that to happen. And, you know, that's part of what the society does. So we do have 2 virtual ones. There's one for 18 and above, and then we have one for teens who like to get together. And so we have 2 of those. We have a virtual and then an in-person for teens. And then we have an adult group. Matter of fact, the adult group today are having a socially distanced Halloween party. So yeah, there are opportunities. And you know what, I think that each, you know, with the 16 counties in Maine, so each county could set up something, and the virtual really has opened it up to the whole state of Maine. So we, you know, certainly anybody can attend ours, but I think different counties are offering different things. We have a list, and on our website, we actually have a support group listing. So if anybody's not familiar with support groups in the area and they're looking for a teen group or an adult group, go to our website and we have a whole listing of support groups.
Nancy wrote, could you put that Facebook address with the special community part back for a minute, please? Yeah, so Nancy, I'll write in. So it's simply just my Facebook page. There's a specific tab on there that's just Kerry's Autism Journey. So if you type in facebook.com/Kerry's Autism Journey, the video tab has a specific tab which just says the special community interviews. So that's the area where you can see all the videos of all the self-advocates. Do we have any other thoughts or questions? I know that a few questions were coming in via the chat box. So I'm just scrolling up right now to see if we missed anything. I'm not seeing anything. And you know what? We are getting right at, oh, do you know of any, Christina writes, do you know of any inclusive churches or sites that have virtual services?
And somebody posted some of them in the, if you look further below, you'll see we did list a couple, and there are some that are happening that way. There's actually a program here in Maine where if it's an individual that can't go to the actual church setting, they have for special needs kids in the Catholic faith, they do have a special segment that they can work on all their you know, specialties, learning their prayers and having communion and things like that at their level. So
awesome. Well, everyone, we are at 10:45 and I'm not seeing any more questions popping in. So I'm just going to thank everyone again for attending. We will be getting together for our self-advocate town hall at 11, and then Kathy will be talking at 1 o'clock as well. So we're really excited for those events. Again, just as a reminder for everyone, as soon as you leave this chat, you will be prompted to fill out a short survey where you can get your contact hours, in addition to a section where if you would like the PowerPoint slides, you just have to leave your email and you will receive that later today. So thank you all so much for joining. And Kathy, was there anything else?
Yeah, I just wanted to remind people, we were not sure about the recording, but I noticed that you are recording it. So we're going to be able to share that on our site and everything later on. Probably by Monday, we'll probably have that. Is that correct, Kerry?
Yes, just wanted to make sure that there's no technical glitches with the video, because you never know with virtual, but
we weren't sure at first, and now we're like going, yeah, we'll probably be able to share that, so everybody will get that great information, which is awesome.
Absolutely. All right, well, thank you all so much, and for all the self-advocates and anyone else who wants to join, I'll see you in just a few minutes. Have a great day all.